Hi, hello, and welcome back to the channel. And when I thought this couldn't get any weirder, somehow it has, because I seen a post in r/YouTube that says, "The internet is genuinely dead. VPN/proxy detected. To continue, turn off your VPN/proxy. This will allow YouTube to locate the best content." And it says, "I just got this for the first time. I live in the UK, so I don't want to submit ID. It's sad that the internet has breached this level of privacy. And considering that they lived in the UK and with the Online Safety Act being rolled out, I wasn't super surprised that they were seeing this. And I know that YouTube trying to block VPNs isn't necessarily a new thing, but I've heard that it's being ramped up, and whether it's because of the Online Safety Act or the policies that they're trying to roll out on the 13th, still weird. But what stood out to me most, though, was the fact that despite this post getting 16,000 upvotes and 743 comments, sorry, this post has been removed by the moderators of r/YouTube. And whether it is a human bot removing it or if it's a bot removing it, it's weird. I thought it was a bit weird, but just stick with me, because on top of that, you have these congressmen and women from different countries. For example, Peter Kyle saying, "If you want to overturn the Online Safety Act, you are on the side of predators. It is as simple as that." And Representative Mary Miller saying, "Children should never have access to adult content online. This is something everyone should agree on, yet many sites refuse to enforce strong age verification. It's time to pass the Screen Act and protect our most innocent." And I think the fact that you have these politicians pushing this narrative that says, hey, if you don't support this legislation, you're a creep, you're a weirdo, and trying to push this to silence you into not talking about it or scaring you, because most people, hopefully, would say, I don't want to be a creep, I don't want to do that. The fact that they're pushing that to where you don't want to talk about it, and the fact that these posts are getting removed on YouTube, doesn't set right with me. It doesn't set right with me. And at the same time, whenever we're having this rhetoric being pushed about, like, don't speak against this bill, we have so many other countries that are either adopting or considering measures similar to the UK's Online Safety Act, aiming to hold online platforms accountable for harmful content and to protect users, especially children, including Australia, the European Union, Singapore, South Korea, Canada, France, Germany, Fiji, and all of these other countries. Just, if you think about it with me, you know, a lot of us, as we are looking at this legislation and kind of seeing, you know, the discrepancies, like the things that are wrong, for example, like the vagueness of these bills, because that is a huge one that I've talked about. I don't think it's a coincidence that at the rise of all of us talking about this, that they're pushing this narrative to scare us into not talking about it, and even removing the posts of conversations entirely. And I think anyone looking at this situation, just looking at the bigger picture, would see what's wrong with this. And even despite that, something that I found so interesting was the fact that, like, I knew as soon as we read these bills, for example, in the Screen Act, if we go under paragraph 4 that says the definition of harmful to minors with respect to a picture, image, graphic image file, film, videotape, or other visual depiction means that the picture, image, graphic image file, film, videotape, or other depictions taken as a whole and with respect to minors appeals to the prudent interests of nudity, sex, or expression, depicts, describes, represents in a patently offensive way with respect to what is suitable for minors, an actual or simulated sexual act or sexual contact, actual or stimulated normal or perverted sexual acts, or lewd exhibition of the genitals, and taken as a whole, lacks serious, literary, artistic, political, or scientific value to minors, is obscene, or is child pornography. And we knew, especially whenever I read it, that based on the vagueness and the wording alone, that there was going to be problems. And there were a couple that stood out to me specifically, because there was an article that I found titled 10 Examples of Absurd Fallout from the UK's Online Safety Act. And obviously there are the obvious ones. For example, scan your face to stream music, which we talked about in the last video. However, historic art is off limits. A post on X that featured an image of Saturn devouring his sun, a famed 19th century painting by Francisco de Goya, was restricted for UK users until their ages could be verified, according to BBC. And now, explain this to me. If we go back to paragraph 4, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. It's historic art. Where, explain to me where this lacks value. And obviously, like, I figured, unfortunately, that there was going to be things like that. And we even talked about how it could potentially censor the news, you know, and there were some people that had told me, Branny, I think that's a stretch, you know, because, and I get it, you know, if you haven't looked into this type of stuff, you would never be able to fathom, like, they can't censor the news. Like, they can't do that. However, war news and debates about sexual predators are being blocked. Social media companies are blocking wide-ranging content, including posts about the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, in an attempt to comply with the UK's new Online Safety Act, and even including censoring debates on the grooming gangs that we talked about last video. And even over in the UK, there was another article that I found that says, concern over mass migration is terrorist ideology, says Prevent. At this time, where we have so many issues regarding, you know, there's been a lot of protest, there have been wars, there has been a lot talking about, you know, immigration policies and all of that stuff. Like, if we put the big picture together, the post being removed, these congressmen and women saying all of the same things while all of this stuff is going on, and then all of the discrepancies that is happening, you know, because they said, obviously, like, if it has value and it's educational, like, it won't be restricted. Bullshit. Here it is right here. And even going back to the music stuff, I mean, like, who's to say that that lacks artistic value? And my point in bringing all of this up is that it is blatantly obvious that it is coordinated and they don't want us talking about this. Because even going back, you know, to the r/YouTube post being deleted, I've had several creator friends that have told me that they've tried to create content to try to get, like, awareness and get the word out about this, and their videos are doing absolutely abysmal compared to the rest of their content. It's just getting buried under the algorithm. And again, it's not a coincidence. I need to stress to you guys that it is not a coincidence, and we cannot fall for the rhetoric of refusing to talk about this just out of fear of looking like a creep. Because honestly, you're not being a creep. You are trying to fight against censorship. And even, like, if you care about education, for example, going back to the art, historic art being off limits, like, there is so much that we can learn from these things. There is so much that we can learn from these things. And I think a huge point, you know, in blocking a lot of this stuff, including the historic things, despite the fact that it does not lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, is the fact that I think, personally, that they don't want us to learn, you know, and by trying to inhibit the speech and the talking about this legislation and these bills, they don't want us collaborating together and learning and seeing what's wrong with this. Because the second we see what is wrong with this, that is the second it all starts to tumble down. You see what I'm saying? And the fact that the internet has been, in their opinion, far too free for far too long, because as long as we have access to this information, and as long as we have access to each other, you know, because here I am sitting behind my desk being able to talk to you guys about this with, thankfully, thank God, almost no wall. As long as we can do that, the word can get spread, changes can be made. However, whenever all of this stuff is happening in the world and they try to bombard us with the news cycle, whenever that stops working, they have to take more drastic measures, unfortunately, like this. By removing the post, by whispering in our ear that we're doing something wrong and trying to gaslight us into being okay with censorship, you know? And something that I really wanted to bring up in particular is the fact that I know whenever we talk about censorship, unfortunately, politics is gonna come up, you know, because we've talked about several different politicians in the last couple of videos, and I wanted to say that I am not left or right. You know, and in saying that, it is so important that we do not make this a left or right issue. Because the second we make this a left or right issue, which unfortunately has been happening, you know, you have everyone bickering amongst each other like, oh, the left wants this, the right wants this, you're wrong because. And the whole point that this legislation is not good for anybody, that point gets lost in everyone bickering. Like, they want us to fight and they want us to argue so they can quite literally try to go through with this shit as we sleep, you know, as they have done in the past. And to further add on to that, and and more reasons that we shouldn't make this a left or right issue, is the fact that if we go to the Kids Online Safety Act and we go to the co-sponsors, there's 41 of them, there are several different, it's both Republicans and Democrats. And if we go to the Screen Act here and go to the co-sponsors, obviously there's a bit less than there are in the Kids Online Safety Act, but a lot of these people are the same co-sponsors that were on the Kids Online Safety Act. And my thing is, something that was really fishy to me, you know, is the fact that, like, it's not just the far right, it's not just the far left that's endorsing this stuff. It is both of them. You know what I mean? And when has the government ever agreed on anything? When have they ever agreed on anything? And I think that in and of itself should be a red flag, because if they're all for, you know, protecting the kids and blocking all of this stuff, what don't they want you to see? You know, because it's not just the children, it's anybody who refuses to identify their age, you know, and that I cannot explain how dangerous that is. But before I keep yapping, my point is that we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep talking about this because something ain't adding up. You know, something is very fishy here. And as I was saying earlier, I'm not left or right, but I do try to present this information in a way that I can get it across to everyone, because in one way or another, it is affecting all of us. Unfortunately, because even though, for example, in the US, this legislation hasn't been passed yet, it is affecting the platforms that we use, such as Spotify and such as YouTube trying to roll out those policies on the 13th. You know, and I think that if YouTube successfully does this, that more, whether it be like apps, websites, whatever, in the US, companies, like, I think they are soon to follow. But what do you guys think? Because I know that this was a lot, but if you enjoyed the conversation that we had here together today, please be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe if you're so inclined, watch another video to spend more time with your girl. And I will see y'all next time. Bye, guys.